time. And it's going to have to be we have to do all this like in 5 minutes, and it's just a lot of time. If I can remember the schedule, but the teams get a few minutes to present it, so it's going to really be how they present themselves. I think it's really going to come down to that. I mean, we have time for Q&A, but it's going to be challenging. Just the remote and virtual aspect of it. I mean, if this were in person, it probably wouldn't be as bad, but just having them seeing how the robot really performs. That's we're not judging performance of the robot anymore. It seems like it's really around. They've been moving towards this kind of just engineering process, right? What's your development approach? What's the methodology used? All that kind of stuff, which is fine. As long as teams understand that, they better have an engineering notebook. But I think the biggest challenge is just the time. I mean, 10 minutes is just, wow, that's just really short. I mean, we used to have like 15 minutes, so it wasn't much more, but with some,
Well, this is, yeah, but I mean, this is going to be 5 minutes with the team presenting and then 10 minutes Q&A.
Is it 10 or 5?
Yeah, because we are not doing the way First wants us to do.
I like our structure better, like even just hearing you talk about it.
So we'll actually have 15 minutes. So we'll go 15 minutes in design programming or 15 minutes in project. And then the teams will kind of have 5 minutes with just the core value and then 15 minutes with that other set of judges. We just felt 10 minutes was not giving kids.
Okay.
I mean, 15 minutes is hard. Some teams you could have 30 minutes with them and not have enough time. Yes.
I mean, I think it might, usually when I've done judging before, theoretically it was 15 minutes, but frankly, I usually set the timer to like 13. Because there was time to move the teams in and out. So I'm sure there'll still be some of this just operationally with us moving from Discord room to Discord room and people coming in, but at least we won't have to wait, 15 minutes or not 15 minutes, a minute or two while a large group of family and friends and coaches all come into the room.
I think we'll just have to figure out good ways of looking at both design and programming. I don't know if there's a point in programming if they want to share their screen and show us some of the code and that kind of stuff. If they're using Discord on the same machine, they've got the software on it, but it's just trying to figure out how to see. I mean, the robot, you can kind of have it show them, show a few like key missions and things to see how the robot's been designed to do some things, but programming might be tougher if you can't see the code and stuff.
Speaking of which, and this might have changed, I've obviously been out of FLL now for 4 or 5 years, but I know back when I was doing it, there was a big, in the programming breakout portion, they would have us walk through kind of the programming to make sure that the students really understood it was the kids doing the programming and not the coaches doing the programming. Is that still something that we're looking for? Do we have ideas of how we want to do that? Because obviously with only 5 minutes, like you're not going to sit down with one student and be like, well, walk me through this program.
I think it's going to be harder. I think we're going to have to give a little bit more benefit of the doubt. Teams are going to be able to share screens, I think. But still, I can see it being a challenge possibly for a kid to bring up their screen and bring up the Mindstorms programming environment and get it working and seeing things correctly.
Yeah, I think it's just going to come down to that. I mean, you ask those open-end questions. Like I know Tim and I have done that. It's like, explain how you did this, or tell me more about this. So just let them. If they can't, then that's a good indication they've not do the work. So that didn't happen very much, but I think it's just you got to ask them, how'd you do that? Where'd you come up with that idea? Or explain to me how this works, and then that's really how it comes down to.
I think it's going to be harder to sit down with a programmer and make sure they can navigate the programs and go into all the little my blocks and know all this. So it is going to definitely be, I think, a little bit more benefit of the doubt in asking questions on, well, how did you do this? What kind of problems did you have? Because if they didn't have any problems, they probably didn't do it. I'm serious. I've seen kids come to design judging with these programs that somebody could have done for a PhD thesis, and they're like, well, it all worked the first time. What? No. That's true, but definitely.
And again, as Tim said, the more he looks at the rubrics, the more you see that they're actually never asking, did you use my blocks? Did you use loops?
No.
It's what was the process? How did you get from here to here?
Mm-hmm.
And Chris, you kind of talk about an engineering notebook. Show me that scratch of paper that, where you did your pseudocode.
But teams had online notebooks last year. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, they had those online. It was like, well, I don't have time to look at your website, guys. But now they actually have where to show us. So sorry about that.
I mean, if they can have something that is designed to share, that's going to be easier than, holding up, a piece of paper to, here, can you see my notes? Well,
Yes.
not with a background. That completely doesn't work. But yeah, that's something that hopefully some of the better teams will have, just share available to share with us.
Is the engineering notebook required for FLL this year?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
No, but that's
I know
usually
it changed in FTC this year.
Yeah, but that's usually what sets teams apart. Because if they have a notebook, they have a better approach, better methodology, better documentation.
Mm-hmm.
If the robots are all awesome, the notebook was always what did it for me. What teams? Not that we have to get into judging approaches, but yeah, I think it's just it's always helpful. And I think even now, with more virtual, it's going to be even more important.
And I've always liked notebooks that showed evolution of the robot or mission strategy or code, because that's a lot of what I'm seeing in the rubric is how did things change? How did you improve? How did you go from step A to B to C and finally the final finished product? Because that's the other thing I'm usually skeptical about is if they, it's incredibly complicated and they didn't evolve it. It just kind of, came out of thin air. I like to see some evolution of how things changed and how they got there.
One of the difficulties that we've had in the practice runs is engaging the team. So when you're in person, it's a lot easier to engage the teams and keep them going. But if when you're online like this, if the team really doesn't know what they're doing or they don't know how to answer a question, it can be some really interesting, awkward silences. So trying to keep them engaged, encourage questions the best that they can to present the information that they need to properly represent the team in their work. That could be kind of a challenge that we're going to have to get used to in a more virtual sense.
Yeah, I think that would be hard because I know at least in past years in the judging sessions with less experienced teams, it often turned it more into a coaching session than a judging session. And I think that's a lot harder to do virtually. I'm not coaching this year, but I can't I can't quite comprehend how hard it would be to actually coach a team virtually. So my hat's off to anyone who's attempting it. But yeah, it definitely, I'm having been able to, in previous years, sit down at the laptop and help somebody understand how to use comment feature or whatever. That's going to be more difficult this year to help them out.
And Tim, I'm trying to remember Alan's words. Alan helped with the last judging training. And what he talked about is really, we are there, especially because the kids don't get that break between project and design. And if their project was, if things were kerplooey and those kids are feeling bad, this is our chance to kind of say, okay, I want to see your robot. I want to see your process. I want you to, we kind of have to be their cheerleaders. We have to get them excited. No kid wants to be doing this over Discord or Zoom. They want to be showing you their robot. So we really have to up our game so that when we're coming across on that screen, we're there for them. Like you said, Chris, we're only getting 15 minutes with them. So we want to make this 15 minutes really a positive experience. And, like Josh said, that is a struggle coming across, and the kids have to be careful not to speak over anyone else. So we keep saying this is kind of the season where it's benefit of the doubt. It's not poor core values. If they're interrupting, I'm trying to get it across, and all of a sudden Tim's, his microphone's not working, so now I kind of have to take over or something like that. So it's really going to be a season of benefit of the doubt, and how can we best let them show the best that they can show.
Jeannie, in some of that, when you did a technology dry run, did you see teams all on their own separate machines, or were they all in one room together? And how did that work? Was it every team was actually virtual, or how did that work?
Just about every team was different than the last one. We had kids in bedrooms. We had, one group had 3 kids in a bedroom, and mom was there, and then they were at another table. We had one team that actually had 3 they had 3 different homes, 3 robots, 3 complete tables, and each kid was going to do 1 robot run. So I think we're going to see such differences. And now with this 4-week lockdown, teams are, whoa, sorry.
You're really backlit there, yeah.
Yeah, that was my halo I just illuminated. So we've seen everything. We saw one coach who she had to have her kids on Google Meet, and then she somehow shared her Google Meet through Discord. So guys, you're going to see everything.
Again, adding on to that, the other one I saw during the practice round was that there was a lot more coach and parents involvement too. At least for we were practicing for the refereeing side. So that kind of makes sense because you have parents or coaches doing the camera. But I feel like they're going to be doing the camera too, maybe for the judges. And because they're there, they might be more inclined to talk for the kid or anything like that. It's going to be hard to tell them like, hey, stop, we want to talk to the kids. Or
I'll have no problem with that.
But it is something that we are giving some more leniency. Normally we would ask the parents the coach not to do any of that. But, if things are going crazy, we're going to ask the coach, hey, can you step in there? We're not asking the kids to be masters at this technology. They usually are better at it than us. But
well, they've gotten a lot of practice with distance learning nowadays. But
yes,
it seems like the kids are on Zoom more than I am every day at work.
Right.
And at least potentially, while the coach would be there, the parents might not be connected, or they might be in the background.
Oh, so we won't. They could be holding cue cards up, and we'll never know.
They could be. You see them looking up and reading slowly.
And then we get into talking.
You know what's going on.
One thing for programming this year too, first removed the restrictions on what programming language they could use.
Yes.
So
Yep, I saw that.
we had quite a few questions in the practice rounds from teams that were having difficulty sharing code back and forth. So they were asking, what programming language should we be using? What program should we be using? How should we be sharing code? So that could be something to dive into in both design and programming, is how did you share your design? How did you share your programs if you couldn't be together in a room?
Mm-hmm. Are you seeing a lot of teams going the Python or the Mindstorm route? Because I know they introduced Python this year.
Mainly Mindstorms. There were some teams using Scratch.
Yep.
There was one other team that was using a different program, and I'm blanking on what it was.
So they have all the sensor and motor controller blocks in Scratch and those other things. I mean, they have built-in libraries for that stuff. Oh, that's cool.
At least
they just released kind of a package for Python, which is nice because it allows you to integrate with GitHub. So I know that's what my sibling is hoping to do.
Okay. I mean, they did it for Java, I know, when my team in FTC, but that's cool.
Mm-hmm. FTC switched about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spike Prime, the Python is very well integrated. So it's relatively, you can't call Python from scratch, but you could run Python and Scratch programs on the same robot without a problem.
Wow.
That's pretty nice. I like playing with it, though it sounds like some teams have had memory problems.
Yeah, the teams that went to Spike Prime are, a lot of them are going back to EV3. And then the EV3 classroom, which is the scratch based for the EV3, that has a lot of glitches. It's almost a beta version. So we're seeing teams really hitting walls with things just aren't working right. So there's kind of a frustration level. And again, if teams are getting, if they're having those troubles, that's actually a good thing in judging is, okay, tell me about that. What did you do and how did you overcome it? So maybe they go back to EV3G, the previous software. That's a learning curve. That's a positive that they learn that they need to maybe step back to go forward, something like that. So, but yeah, it's unfortunate some of those teams are really having those difficulties with the software.
Yeah, that's too bad, though. That's something that happens in the real world all the time. If you try technology a little bit too soon. But so other concerns, issues? I can bring up the rubrics if people
Yeah,
have.
why don't we look at those, Tim?
Sure. Let me share this. Are you seeing my PDF? So yeah, looking at this, another time, it looks, for a lot of the rubric sections, um, like the create, generally more of the top half might talk more about robot, and the bottom half mentions the code. So I'm not sure if when we start dividing uh, design and programming, for like also the design block. Again, the code is the bottom three, and the robot talks a little bit more about the top three. I'm still a little bit nebulous on exactly what a work plan is, but I'm willing to go with it. Or
So
just
are the kids.
I think sounds pretty general. Like, do they have any kind of plan or any kind
Yes.
of schedule, plan, methodology, approach?
Yeah, is that referring more to kind of the daily work plan or the season work
I think
plan?
it's anything.
Okay.
Do they have something in their practices? Do they have something as an overall schedule? Do they have an overall? I mean, I think work plan's a generic term for, did they plan anything of what they were doing with their project and their robot?
So did this kind of get moved? Because I think that used to be part of core values, correct?
No, there's something in the documentation section. Did they have a strategy or design approach or something?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing in here about robustness and speed and all that kind of stuff. That's all done. This is really all around methodology and approch. The iterate stuff seems a little too generic. I mean, I'm hoping they had a robot that works. I'm assuming that means they tested it. So I think it's more of their approach for testing. Was it methodical? Was it, that kind of stuff? I mean, code was improved. If it ran, it must be improved from what it was.
And
So that might be a hard one to differentiate, but.
And that's one, like you're looking at, it says some evidence of testing, a lot of evidence. What is a lot of evidence?
I guess it's just, do they document it? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you kind of have to figure out what do you think is a lot in your own brain. And again, judging to that rubric. And you kind of know, we were on a focus group redoing these rubrics, and we battled pretty hard to even get this level of the sum and a lot, because it was even more vague than this. So we're hoping that, again, with the input from the Minnesota judges, that we'll be able to go back and say, okay, can we define this a little bit better? What is sum and what is a lot? One of the things I do like is, if you go up to the top, the identify, some team members learned building and coding skills, many teams, all team members learned building and coding skills. It doesn't say all members are awesome at it.
Right.
So if all the kids learn something, And even if that kid learned that he hates programming or he hates building, he learned something. So, if they can all say, yeah, I learned something, that's, developing accomplished. That's kind of that. We can't expect them all to be professional programmers. Not every kid likes to program. Not every kid likes to build.
Right.
But if they learn that they hate it or they learn that they liked it, they did actually learn something. So
Yeah.
I actually think that that's kind of one of those places where we can maybe dig a little bit as a judge and say, did you all learn something about building?
Yep.
And maybe have them go around and kind of see how they fit in here.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm seeing some overlap in that, that section in identifier between learning, building, and coding skills, and in the bottom for communication, clear evidence that some team members,
Yeah.
many team members, whereas the bottom one, I'm struggling.
Wait, aren't those
those?
Yeah, that looked, especially
those
that.
seem like the same?
There's one that's explanation versus evidence. Yeah, I'd like
No,
to
the very identify to versus communicate to.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
I see.
those are looking very similar to me. Clear evidence that all team members involved versus all team members learn building and coding skills.
Well, I think, you can have some teams. I mean, we've had teams where it seemed like none of the team members were involved with the robot or programming, and they did the project.
Right.
So
Right,
I think that's where you're going to differentiate some, especially larger teams.
That would be my question is, for example, so for identify to, if you have a student who joins the team knowing, or they're in like year 2 or 3, and they know they don't like robot design and programming, and so they're only on project, would we then dig them for that? Because I know in the past we encouraged that almost of kind of splitting up the work.
At one point, the FLL rubrics actually seem to encourage specialization. I've never favored it one way or another, but I also didn't mark a team down, if they were divided that way. So half did project and half did robot. If you decide to do that, that's fine.
Right. What I'm asking is that identify to kind of forcing us to do that?
Seems to be encouraging it.
Yep. And we'll see if some teams even, because teams have these rubrics in their books, right? So they'll have to see how they want to demonstrate some of that. They don't read them. If I was a coach, I never read the rubrics. I'm like,
you did it?
That's right. Oh, I did.
Oh,
I think after 4 years I did.
oh, see, my kids marched right down that fourth column and said, what do we have to do?
That's what I did.
So much so that my kids used the words that were in that column. One of the things was streamlined and efficient, and my teams would say, we're streamlined and efficient. So
I was always suspicious of those teams.
Oh, no, mine had you convinced, because by the end they're like, you said, oh, were they streamlined and efficient? Yes, because they told me they were. But I don't think we're never really looking to ding the kids. It's probably what's going to keep them out of Exceeds if the kids refuse to even try to learn any building skills or programming skills. That's probably going to keep that team out of that final column. And it may be just, and again, if they say, I know that I hate programming, I tried it, I don't like it, they have actually learned that they don't like it. Or, and I've never been afraid of a team that says, I've got a lead programmer, I've got a lead builder. Because that's what happens in real life. You do have a lead on things. Can that lead teach the other kids something along the way? That's a great thing. That's that's a really positive thing, is letting that lead be a mentor to the team. So
one thing I would also mention, because I am mentoring this year, is that we aren't going to see their project presentation. But some teams, like I know the team I work with is developing an app for their project. And so they have students who are not on the robot part of the team, but they're still doing coding. So I think we might want to be a little flexible with that too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And even that first identify, section, it also talks a lot about mission strategy, which is really different than, team members learning building and coding skills. So there's some flexibility, I think, in evaluating teams. Similarly, the communicate section has design process, and then it lumps in involvement of team members.
Well, it's can they explain their process, right? How well can they explain it versus having one, which is like the design section, right? So it's
Right.
It's like because there's some teams that had a good job, but by golly, they couldn't explain it at all. So it's just that those more well-rounded teams. I'm just glad we have 12 numbers to pick from because 4 is just not enough.
Yeah, 4 is not enough. But I think it's gonna be harder for me to give more exceeds this year.
Yeah.
I mean, not that that's usually typical until sectionals and states, but I think it's going to be a little bit tougher to put people in that category.
Yeah. What's frustrating a little bit for me with this rubric is that it doesn't really say what makes something, like how do you get beyond accomplished? Like accomplished is fully clear or all team members or a lot. Like all of these feel like the maximum amount within accomplished.
Yes.
Well, it just says good, so maybe on great and under great is better.
Yeah. You just have to go beyond a lot to
fully clear. Just be extremely clear. Yeah. I think it's just how you'll see it in teams that I think that stand out, that present themselves well, that have it documented. That robot is just slick, so I think you'll see it. Those teams usually stand out.
I mean, I think in
and
general,
now it's gonna be even more. Sorry, go ahead.
In general, evaluating teams into 3 different levels of accomplishment or 4 different levels isn't that hard. Subdividing further than that can be hard, but generally, pretty quickly if a team is beginning, developing, accomplished, or they have a chance to win the state championship.
And then if you're looking at this rubric, like I said, if you're a beginning team and then you get this rubric back and you have this whole empty column, to me that feels, like I said, yucky. So that's why we're saying go ahead and use that exceeds column to tell them something, that might move them from one to the next. We don't want that to be completely empty. We want you to use that and use the bottom for great job and think about, because that's a lot of empty space for a beginner team to see, wow, nothing there. So you'll have to be clear, maybe say your team was beginning and to get to developing, blah, 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 maybe help them see that, you're using the space to get them to the next level. But I think then you can identify, in your design specifically, this is what can take you from developing to accomplished or something like that.
Yep. No, I like those. I like the way you showed those comments. I did not know that was a thing. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to type on the tablets last year anyways, but no, it's good.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a good thing. And then I think whenever we come back in person, we're probably going to encourage you guys to bring your own laptops and continue to do it that way.
Yeah, I think definitely, I'm on a dual monitor system here. I think that's going to be very helpful for judges too, if you have the ability to do that. And then I can keep my Word document with all my cheat comments to
right.
I'll have my cheat. That's what I'm like to make sure I have my standard responses all typed up already.
I think I need a randomizer or something.
Well, remember, the kids aren't gonna, they generally don't have anyone else. No one else is looking at another team's rubric, really. So you can say the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah, and I guess we won't have like eight teams from the same school this year necessarily.
And my other thought is, if you do have 8 teams from the same school and they see the same comment over and over and over, maybe they need to think about working on that.
That's very true.
Maybe that's important.
I'm looking forward to not needing to decipher Trisha's handwriting.
Yes.
As someone who's done a lot of that.
Yeah, and you do. I was surprised how much you could type, because I've done a few of these, and then I've turned them into the PDFs. There's actually a lot of space, so you can write a lot.
Right.
You don't have to write a lot, but
Yep.
you know, you want to get a couple sentences in each. But if you want to write a book, there's a lot of space there.
Does the PDF kind of expand to make space?
It
for
does
it
not.
then?
It does not. And
Okay.
so, and we're not sure where it cuts off.
Or
Okay,
That's something that I'm
that would
again.
be helpful to know.
Yeah. So
would-
I'm working with John, who is our developer, to give me even the carriage returns. So maybe you can make a list of things. So that's something. He and I have been working on this since about June.
Yep. Jeannie,
Kinda.
after you put comments in, is there like a visual indication that the comment is there, or do you have to click the button again to see?
You have to click that button again to see it.
Yeah.
It's on my wish list that it would like
Yeah.
change colors if you type something in there.
Yeah. Or even
But I
like
don't know that he's going to get to
that.
do that.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I know that's, you know, often when I'm doing these, I'll mark out the column quickly, and then I'll add comments later, and it's good to know where I need to add comments.
And now that the tournaments have been pushed out further, I may be able to get John to add a few things for me. You know, he's a volunteer. He does this in his spare time.
Sounds like a typical customer to me. Oh, I got more time. I can get more stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, are we about done here?
Yep.
Yep.
I think we're
Okay.
about done.
Okay, great.
We'll leave the room.
Okay, thanks.
All we do is just click leave room.